Welcome to this Critics' Choice Association roundtable discussion with the legendary and incredibly talented Reggie Rock Bythewood. I'm CCA member Sean Edwards, also board member, honored to be a board member, and also the creator and executive producer of the CCA's Celebration of Black Cinema and Television event, which we produce annually. And it's my pleasure today to conduct this discussion with Mr. Reggie Rock Bythewood to discuss his Apple TV Plus series Swagger. How you doing, my friend?
Thank you, thank you. I'm very happy to be here. Blessed to be here, and just excited to kick it with you.
No, here's the deal. Now you have such an incredible resume, and you've been a writer, you've been a director, you've been a producer, you've acted, you've done all these incredible things. Which one do you find the most interesting, and which one do you find gives you the most comfort when you're working?
Artistically, I really think of myself as writer first. And even when I was, acting, as you said, in the soap opera back then, you know what? It was like I always had to question and challenge the writing, not because I was looking to be a difficult actor, but because I didn't feel that they understood the character that was on the page, So I didn't really realize that's really where a lot of the writing came from. And so I just really just always navigated my way that way. I used to just write as a hobby, but never knew that I was actually shaping a career.
Well, your new series on Apple TV Plus, Swagger, I love the name, and I can't be remiss with saying that, Swagger is part of hip hop vernacular. And since we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of hip hop, which was born in your hometown, the borough of the Bronx, New York.
That's right. That's right. Say it right.
That's right. It was born in the South Bronx, August 11th, 1973. You yourself used to rap, used to break dance. So I want to find out from you, before we even jump into Swagger, what hip hop movie or which movie about the culture has really inspired you and informed you as a filmmaker?
Wow. Well, I'll tell you this, little trivia. I had a role in a hip hop movie that ultimately got cut out. It was Beat Street, directed by Stan Lathan, who I've become, really great friends with years later. But I would say even in Beat Street, and God, I don't even remember the last time I saw it, but ultimately it was really about finding your voice and protecting your voice. And so just that concept, even when just think about hip hop and back then, people just wrote it off as a fad, and who knew that it would be like this global industry that it is now. But for me, really, at the seeds of it, really, hip hop is about giving other people a voice, giving us a voice. And so that's really what I take away from it. And Sean, you've made this connection for me. I didn't even realize, because again, me coming up, if you were rapping, you were writing your rhymes, right? You weren't having somebody write it because, people would be like, you're biting someone. Like you had to write your own material. So I guess, thank you for that connection. Just growing up in the Bronx, like you were saying, I was a rapper, I was a breakdancer, but honestly, we all were, all of us did that. Like growing up in the Bronx, when I did, it was just you came home from school, you got together with your friends, you were in somebody's basement, you were working on your breakdance moves or working on your rhymes, and we would go to the party and we would battle for equipment. It was like a really crazy but amazing thing to experience.
Yeah, I love that. I love that how you just all of a sudden you went back in time and you reminisced and you brought it home as we celebrate 50 years of hip hop. So that leads me to ask the title of the series, Swagger, definitely hip hop vernacular. Why did you choose that title for the series?
It organically came about, and I don't know, it was just very accessible. It was just the first idea I had for the series because and why I like the title. On the surface, it's about bravado and competence. Might even suggest that you have a hard exterior. But in the context of our show, our characters, our storytelling, swagger is really about having a cause bigger than yourself. It's the ability to execute that cause that gives you swagger.
Wow, that's a great breakdown. Did you toy with any other names for the series, or you knew right away we're calling this swagger and that's what we're going with?
No, I knew right away. At some point, they wanted to have the title a secret and keep the project secret. So at one point, I had to come up. What was harder was coming up with the fake title, so to throw everybody off. So at one point, I think we were calling it DMV. The DMV, but that was never the title. It was always swagger.
Yeah, I love it. It's such a great title. And I will say this, the idea for this series is not necessarily 100% a series about sports, but sports is the backdrop. And when you talk about the genre of Black sports movies and TV series, it's loaded with classics and masterpieces. I mean, you can go all day naming classic movies, TV series, and documentaries about the world of Black sports. And in particular, when you narrow it down to this basketball, there are so many classic movies where you have Spike Lee's He's Got Game, you have Above the Rim, and you have your wife's Love and Basketball, which is like an all-time classic and favorite. So why did you want to cover this particular space using basketball as the backdrop?
Actually, it was the last thing I wanted to do. So I got a call from Imagine Entertainment, and they told me that Kevin Durant and Brian Grazer had a meeting and had some ideas that there could be a series inspired by Kevin Durant's youth basketball days. And so, a person that was working at Imagine at the time, a woman named Francie Calfo, called me up. And I was very reluctant to take the meeting just for all the reasons that you said. Like, there's been so many, really great basketball narratives. Am I going to feel like I have something to say? But I went out to Oakland. He was playing, he was still at Golden State at the time, and met with him. And was really blown away by his vulnerability, by some of the challenges he had as a youth. But probably the biggest connection is that, I was able to hear his story and find something in my personal story. And, just me, growing up in the Bronx and being on a soap opera, and everybody in the neighborhood knowing me. And there's like a level of celebrity and expectation and eyes always on you. And so it was really interesting to hear, grew up in a single parent household, so did KD. So there's so many like personal connections that I made with this story, and really saw it as an amazing canvas that I ultimately, had to surrender to what was happening emotionally and decided to do it.
How involved is Kevin Durant on the series in terms of season 1 and season 2? Like, what's his official role? What does he do? Is he like your confidant? Does he add advice? How does his role work within your world of bringing a series to life?
So in season 1, we had a marathon meeting, over a weekend, and then had some, quite a bit of follow-up calls. And I just felt those conversations were, enough to generate 3 seasons of material. So I don't call him every day, every week. It's just more like check-ins. And he's just been very encouraging and very supportive. And as much as I told him, it would be really great characters and a great narrative, great storytelling, also promised him we would have the best shot basketball on TV, and I think he agrees. So it's great.
What's the one thing Kevin told you or taught you about basketball that really stuck with you, that helps with you in the filmmaking process?
I think, all right, I'm going to give you 2 things. I mean, I think on one level, he talked a lot about the game within the game. That it's not just like, hey, you work hard at practice and eat right and come home. There's like all the sort of politics and all the people maneuvering and all the people that are looking at you as a meal ticket. Like really sort of understanding this game within the game was something that we really focused on. And then I think the other part of it was just really when someone tells you about their experiences, you want to create a situation where you feel like you're in the room with him. You want to be inside of his head when he's in tough situations. So the other part of it, I really decided to create a series where the audience would feel more like a participant, would feel more like they're a part of the action as opposed to feeling like a spectator.
Wow, it's great. And the thing that I really love about Swagger, and you really established this in season one, but you've actually done this with all of your work. When you go back and look at, Get on the Bus, and you go back and look at Biker Boys, is you've used this and you've really utilized this KRS-One phrase that he created called edutainment, where you combine education with entertainment. But with Swagger, and particularly season number 2, you've really taken that to the next level. I mean, talk about how you've been able to sort of like create this series by injecting both the entertainment angle, but really tackling some really important issues that are really important to the fabric of not only basketball, but to the culture and to the whole vibrancy in the way that, Blacks have had to navigate throughout the course of history in America.
So I think one of the things in initially creating the series, there's this expression I heard, in college, which is a psychology course. You got to enter somebody's world in order to lead them out. And so understanding that this is a series to challenge perspectives, to ultimately be unapologetically idealistic and make the world a better place, right? In this point in time, in this contemporary setting. I really felt I needed to just sort of bring people in and let the basketball be out in front. That as you go through the series in season 1, obviously, while basketball always is important in our narrative, it's not necessarily the meat and potatoes of our storytelling. It's really about growing up in America, growing up today in America, and so in season 2, what was really great also is that we fast forward and we get to the senior year, and we're actually like dealing with these young adults, these teenagers on the way to adulthood, womanhood, manhood, and everything that entails them feeling the urgency of figuring out their lives, but also really seeing the urgency of moving through this country with their voices and in a country and in an institution that might look to stifle their voices. So I really wanted to bring all of that to the forefront. And also along the way, this question of are we free? How free are we? Started to percolate within myself, within the writer's room, and really wanted to take that on as storytellers.
Yeah, talk about, well, real quick, I do want to ask you this, because the difference between season 1 and season 2, you jumped 4 years. Was that always intentional, or were you forced to have to do that because of circumstances beyond your control?
Yeah, I mean, really feel blessed and fortunate. I didn't feel forced to do anything. But one of the great things that I really started to do as a storyteller, and just like as a human being, like to surrender to certain things, right? So here's a reality. In season 1, pandemic hit us, and it took like 2 years to get through that season. And And then it took like, by the time we got back into production, it was like another year. We had, we waited for the pickup, then we had the writer's room, and then finally we're back up. And it's just showing it's just something that happens with kids in a 3.5 year time span. They just grow, and they kept growing. And, I got my man, Solomon Rama, who plays Phil with a deeper voice than me. And I'm like, what is happening? And so I just didn't want to have one of those series where,
Right.
you got like somebody who's playing 15 years old and they got beards and mustaches. I just wanted to embrace it. And the other part of it is, our youngest son was a high school senior, and an athlete and going on a D1 school. And so it was like I was like living the sort of urgency of what our youngest son was going to. So it just felt like, let's surrender to that. And it really felt liberating and fun to play these characters at their true life ages. And so that's why I did it.
No, smart. It works. And one thing that I really love is how this series really gives an authentic voice and viewpoint, particularly to the young Black cast and especially the males. Talk about your process in working with the writers and how you guys, collaborate and create within the writers' room, and how you constructed your writers' room, because there's been a lot of talk about writers and writers' rooms and the importance of authentic voices. How does your room work, and how do you, delegate the process?
Well, first of all, we have, a diverse room in that men, women, Black writers. We have a Latinx writer. We have two white guys who are in the writer's room, and but predominantly Black staff. And just say like one thing just about the importance of inclusion, diversity, the importance of having people of color in a writer's room is it's not a politically correct thing. It makes content better. Having women in my room makes the show better. And those who push up against that feel like they're losing control because we push for diversity, and not just in the writer's room, by the way, Sean, but we're going to highlight writers right now, but just throughout, it makes content better. Don't have to fight it. And so that's first and foremost what I found in the room. And the other big part of what we're doing in our show, we really want to focus on the humanity of who we are. And so I'm so grateful that you're giving us this time and tapping into the humanity. And it's so easy to write off a show, and there's a parallel with this whole idea of shut up and dribble. Like, we're not just going to shut up and write basketball. Like, we have something to say. And so we all come in having something to say. We all come in needing to shape our characters and give them all the beginning, middle, and end. They can be flawed. They all have to be flawed. They all have their arcs. But we're also putting them in an environment where their voice is being challenged. And so we start there and really look to see where it goes in our narrative.
No, and you did such a good job of that. I know one of the most discussed episodes of season 2, I don't know, for us industry people and, people who work behind the scenes, it's, episode 205, but I'm just, for real people out here, I'm just going to say season 2, episode 5, so they can go right to the episode that we're about to discuss called "Are We Free?" Because I thought that was such a benchmark moment of the series, but it also tackled an issue that hasn't really been dealt with cinematically or on television in a way that you can easily digest it. But it was such a gut punch of an episode in the way that you tackled the penal system and the way that that particular system has just devoured young Black men in America. I mean, why did you decide to touch on that particular issue and incorporate it into your series the way you did? And two, how knowledgeable are you with the, prison institution, and how has it impacted you personally?
So what's really great is when you can be inspired by real life events. So yes, definitely read a lot. There's a lot of great books on mass incarceration, and I've always, been really compelled with this subject. But in my 20s, I went to a detention center with a play I wrote, and I went with a couple of actors, and we performed this play. And it was the first play that most of the people who were incarcerated ever seen. And I was just so young in my writing career at that point, but it was something that always stayed with me. When we left and we're heading out, you could still see people at the fence, and some of them threw us waves, but it was like a really impactful moment for me that, we're free, they're not free, right? And I think that's even where the title just, began, Are We Free? Because it was just something that stayed with me for decades. So now we're in a writer's room and we're talking, and even in the writer's room, I don't know that we're going to do one of our hours of the show dealing with the detention center. And I'd say there's a couple of things that happened. One, our youngest son, Tucson, was playing baseball in Compton, and he was driving home from Compton, and he got pulled over by a police officer. And in the way that two white police officers, male and female, and as the way a pullover could go, it was a positive experience. No major drama. Followed the checklist that Pops gave him, and it was sort of like sense of relief, like that initiation that our kids have to have. He got through it, and so this happens all in a writer's room, and I'm sharing with my writers, And then also around this time, we're talking about one of my other writers, Raquel Baker, who great young writer. She's going to be a superstar as a writer. And she shared with us how she was incarcerated as a teenager and just did something stupid. But it didn't define her life. Like, she's such a success story. She's a great person, great writer who has something to say. And just somehow this idea forms that like we should go into a detention center. And Sean, it wasn't like, here are all the things I read and here are all the things I know, and let's address this. It was like, let's do it. And let's discover what we need to find out in the process. And that's what happened. And I'd say three things. The thing was us really committing to this idea that you could still be a viable member of society if you're incarcerated, particularly as a young person, because our show is focused on young people. And we're always asking the question in our narrative, how do we treat young people in this country? So as a young person, if you go to jail, like, what can we do to not make you a better criminal when you come out? How can we just make you a better student, a better, not better, it's just the best version of yourself? How can we start to do that, right? So we looked at that in the detention center. The other thing is, through our research, really noting that the number one mental health provider for people with mental illness in this country are prisons and jails. And it's like, wow, like, we got to deal with that. We got to say that. We want to put it out there. Now, so those were two things that we really look to do in our narrative. But again, getting back to surrendering to certain things that come into your environment. While we were scouting jails, we were in this, real life, active jail. And this Black woman gets off of a bus. She's shackled, by her hands and feet, and shuffled. She couldn't, walk. She's in her street clothes, and they are, going to break, about to process her. And so even in seeing that, it was startling to us. And so we also knew that that also had to be a part of our narrative. We never heard that woman speak. So I wanted to create characters or a character that we were going to see the process, never actually hearing him speak, but just sort of see him go from citizen to an incarcerated person. So all these things, started to evolve. And it was like, and by the way, I'm sorry if I didn't mention it. I know I mentioned Raquel Baker, this writer in my room. She was also my co-writer in Are We Free? So we wrote this one together. Just wanted to make sure I said that. But so all these things inspired us, and inspired us in an emotional way, which is the best way to just really feel like we want to say something, and we can say it through these characters. And then, when we talk cinematically, there was like an opportunity to have a juxtaposition to this idea of, what if the basketball is free? What if we put the basketball in an environment that we haven't seen in the entire season, which is number one, an outdoor environment, but it's an outdoor environment in the detention center. So there's all this fencing around it. But the game is the freest game we've ever shot, freest game I've ever seen in a basketball narrative, because we shoot the entire game all in one shot. There's not one cut. There's not one edit. It's all one shot. Along the way, I do some slow motion and speed changes. But we say action. All the plays are run. If you miss a basket, too bad, because we're not going to cut. There's no do-over, And so it's really amazing to work in that way. And it's really amazing to have all these sort of deep things happen, and then to also have something cinematically groundbreaking with the basketball game.
No, it's one of the most powerful episodes of television I've ever seen. So job well done, and congratulations on it. It deserves to be seen and seen again and seen over and over again. Incredible, just incredible. All right, well, thank you very much, Reggie, for participating in this Critics' Choice Association roundtable discussion. Congratulations on Swagger, both season 1 and season 2. Incredible series on Apple TV+. If you haven't done so, please check it out. I'm a big fan of starting from the beginning. Watch season 1, then watch season 2. And as we talked about earlier, one of the most incredible episodes of television I've ever seen. Season 2, episode 5. Job well done. Congratulations as a filmmaker. Congratulations as a creative. And thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk with us today about your incredible series.
All right, well, thank you. As we started off, with the 50 years of hip hop, it's about our voice, and so thank you for highlighting our voice, my voice in this discussion, and really appreciate it.
No, thank you, man. I love it, man. One household and two great filmmakers. Man, you guys ever collaborate much together? How does that work?
We're trying to stay married, man.
I love it. I love it, man. Brilliant answer. But no, thanks again for participating in this Critics' Choice Association Roundtable. I've been following your career the whole way through, so I've been enjoying the journey. So thanks so much. Really appreciate the time.
Appreciate it,
Thank
Sean.
you.
Thanks a lot. All right,
Thank
take
you.
care. Thanks.